I don't know what just happened, but my Hangout just crashed, and apparently there's now 2 of me.
Oh, okay. So nice. It's good to hear that I'm not the, well, it's not good, but at least I'm not alone with the technical problems, I would say. Hey, everyone. So it's been, well, okay, there was a problem loading your app. Hopefully you can still hear me. I wanted to say that there has been a lot of stuff happening. I've seen a lot of iterations on GraphQL Mutations, and maybe Philip can fill us in on what has been going on. Some of those have been contributed to Contenta in some ways, some others as blog posts, and you even wrote a blog post about it, right?
Yes. Well, there is nothing terribly new on mutations. So the code has been there for months now, but it was not documented and nobody was able to use it. So that's what we were trying to change. Because even since we don't have automatic mutations in the GraphQL core module anymore, it is quite easy to create the entity mutation. It's basically a plugin with one method that just maps input arguments to entity properties, and the rest, all the validation and response objects, is taken care of by the base class.
Okay, cool. Sounds like someone even managed to do a mutation and uploading a file, yes. which yeah. Given the current state of things, it's like a nice step forward. I would say in general, in the couple, not just for GraphQL, because that's been proven a hard thing to do. And maybe Wim can complement that and use that as a segue to other REST core things, unless you, Philip, want to add something else regarding GraphQL or anything else.
Perhaps one thing. So for us, it's currently a hard time to justify development time for GraphQL. And that's why I'm trying to push the dogfooding route a little more and try to go for like non-decoupled projects, but using GraphQL internally in Twig, which technically works, but we didn't use it in real world until now. And I think this would be a great approach to like justify more development time and get the whole thing more stable.
So I'm curious, did you measure performance of like doing that inside Drupal?
No, that's still one of the question marks there. So we don't have like a real world use case. In theory, the performance shouldn't at least not be worse, and the maintainability should be better. And there's always the question right now, the GraphQL Twig approach is like in compatibility mode, so it just augments Drupal rendering. So you still have your full render array, but where you want to, you can inject data with GraphQL by adding a query to your template. And the long-term goal would be like have no Drupal rendering, like render arrays as they are now at all, but just have a tree of Twig templates.
So did you explore the route of actually basically having like a separate PHP application?
No, this is inside Drupal. So the thing
right now it's inside Drupal, but like would that basically solve those issues by not caring about Drupal at all anymore? I mean, you can do routing and these kind of things using GraphQL, right? But I'm wondering whether this again like adds all the overhead you were talking about, as in developer time overhead.
Not sure. I didn't think about this, to be honest. Not yet.
And I think that's a very cool presentation topic for DrupalCon, for instance. Like,
Yeah,
I would definitely go to one of those. It's horizons, I would say, by having a separate parallel PHP application that talks to Drupal via GraphQL. So it's very sexy. Cool. I'm curious to know more. Please let us know. I'm also curious to know about how to handle custom forms to mutate data. Like that would be can be
another part of like we're exploring right now. So the prototype basically is an idea to replace like panels or display suites with something you have just one template and it pulls information from wherever and renders it.
Awesome.
So
cool.
That's the goal right now.
Well, I definitely hope that justifies more development into GraphQL, at least. And if you end up with some product that it's viable, I mean, past the prototype section, that's even better.
So talking about GraphQL usage, GraphQL got merged into Contenta on November 24th. So about a month and a half ago, just before the holiday period, so to say. But have you, are we already seeing more people using GraphQL because of that and providing more feedback because of that? Or has it not yet happened, maybe because of holiday periods? Yeah, any news around that, maybe?
Well, the module usage is just still steadily going up. But, well, it could be Contenta, yes, it's true.
Well, I'm not sure whether Contenta usage would actually register on Drupal.org as usage. I think it's not going to show up because it's installed using Composer, and Drupal.org usage, well,
yeah,
they should. Sure.
They should realize that, because like GraphQL requires a library, right? I don't think you can use GraphQL outside of Composer.
Right, and so are you saying that it does or doesn't show up?
I would have guessed it does, because otherwise the usage would be 0 right now, because you can't install it without Composer.
Well, maybe people first download the tarball of the Drupal module and then install the GraphQL dependency. Like, it's possible.
I think a lot more people would have asked about this if they would do it this way.
Okay.
We got a question on how to install the external library.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not seeing many issues being filed to Contenta regarding GraphQL. So either that means that nobody has actually, or few people have tried it so far, or nobody's having problems with it and they're just running with it and being successful with it. But I was just bringing it up because that is one way that hopefully more people are being exposed to GraphQL and are able to get quickly started. Yeah, that's all really.
One of the things that's worth noting is that in Contenta, GraphQL was merged as experimental, meaning that there are no consumers to show the content model how to create a full application.
Right.
So that may be one of the reasons why there are no issues, or maybe it's just because they are filed somewhere else, or there are no issues at all, which is hard to believe in software. But those could be some of the explanations. But I am positive that some people are trying out GraphQL in the Contenta context.
Yeah, that seems like that has to be the case. But maybe that is a way for people to get onboarded and familiarized with the GraphQL support in Drupal and Contenta. Being like, for example, Philip, you could link from the GraphQL project page or tweet about Contenta's support for GraphQL, and maybe a low effort thing to get more visibility is to add at least one consumer, maybe something that you already have built before can be adapted slightly and published as part of Contenta so that there is a consumer, so that people can see it in action, and maybe that will entice more people to go with the GraphQL approach. So just trying to think along with you to get more feedback, basically.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. Those seem like great ideas. I was mentioning the file issue. It seemed that it got traction a while ago, but we haven't heard we haven't heard of what is left ever since beginning of December. The ability to upload files that are like in binary upload and very large files, etc. So
Yep.
do you know where that is?
Yeah, sure. So it was first blocked on the normalization of file entities being incomplete in Drupal core, because when you post a file, regardless if it's 1 megabyte or 10 gigabytes, that is response should contain the created file entity. So a bunch of JSON or a bunch of XML or whatever the format is that describes the file entity that you just created. And so that was a hard blocker, because once we would add file upload support and that it was tested, that we have to provide backwards compatibility for however that is supposed to work. So that was the first blocker, and that landed around December 20. File entities now do expose everything that they contain, which wasn't the case until then. And ever since then, so December 20-ish, the binary file upload issue has been unblocked, but it was the holiday period, so not much happened there, unfortunately. Acquia is sponsoring Damien Kloip on Drupal.org, who is the serialization maintainer. And he has been working on that for a really long time during the entirety of 2017, basically. And the issue was ready, and it was just blocked on this on the file normalization issue. That has now been committed as of December 20. And so now he's continuing that issue again. He was spending a bunch of time first on another really important issue. But as of this morning, he's working on the file uploads issue again. So hopefully later today, we will have a patch that is RTB seeable. It already was very thoroughly reviewed, and it's about, I forget, 400 comments long, that issue at this point. So like extremely insanely long, like many years going. But that means that it is feasible that file upload support will land in 8.5, but maybe it won't make it because it's quite close to the deadline. We'll see, but I'm hopeful. And if not 8.5, then definitely 8.6 should ship with it. But yeah, it's super close, and it would help at least core REST and JSON API, potentially also GraphQL. I'm not sure yet how file uploads, what the canonical or best recommended practices for uploading big files in GraphQL. But in any case, it is super, super close. And you could apply the current core patch if you want support for that right now. And people have already been trying it, which is also pretty valuable. So that's what's happening there.
Do you want to give a little update on the rest of Drupal core in the REST module and serialization?
Yep. Yeah. So the most important change to land probably is the fixing of the normalization of file entities. So the thing that was missing before was basically there was, how to explain this simply? Basically, there was something messed up with the URL versus URI of a file entity. So the URI is, in the case of file entities, something like public : / and then the path to the file. So a Drupal stream wrapper URI. And the URL is a public one. So an HTTP or HTTPS URL through which you can actually access the file as being an HTTP application and not a Drupal bit of logic. And that is now made consistent across every normalization. So both JSON and HEL JSON. HEL JSON had its own kind of hacky override there that has now been corrected. Backwards compatibility is retained though. So by default, if you've already installed Drupal before and you have been using the existing stuff, then that will continue to work as it does today. The other thing that is really important that happened in the last few weeks is processed text. So for example, the body fields in blog posts and articles. Until this issue that has landed a few days ago, about a week ago at this point, it was the case that you were only getting the data actually stored for a body field. So for example, let's say an image tag with data, entity, UUID stuff, attributes in there, that's just what was stored, but upon outputs during the filtering, that would have been processed to actually link to the file that was referenced that way. And so all text filtering, all text processing was not available to you as a REST API consumer or JSON API consumer or GraphQL API consumer. And as of this issue, that is exposed as a computed property on text fields. JSON API and GraphQL both still need to add support for non-internal computed fields and computed properties, so that those things are actually exposed, but the data is now there, and it will be exposed in a coherent way across all three. So core REST, regardless of format, JSON API, and GraphQL, once they do support that additional bit of infrastructure, which Tad had worked on for a significant portion of this year, because it took a lot of time to build consensus around that as well. So file entity normalization fixed, and you can actually get the processed text now in the data that you get back in responses, instead of you having to re-implement filter logic on the client side, which was a security nightmare. And then there's a bunch of less high impact but still important infrastructure fixes that don't really make sense to mention here. But those two things are very important steps forward that have landed.
Awesome. Let's not forget the upload file, which is not RTBC or merged, but it's like very close, and you could even try the patch if you wanted to.
Yeah, that one isn't RTBC yet, and actually there is one that is RTBC. That's the other one that Damien Lee has been working on a lot, and also Andre Matiscu has been providing lots of feedback on, which is for term entities, so taxonomy term entities. It is impossible today in Drupal head, and I think GraphQL didn't add a workaround yet. JSON API definitely did not. REST API definitely did not. It is impossible today to get at the parent term for a term. So basically, if you have a hierarchy of terms in a vocabulary, it's impossible to get the parents, which means that certain applications simply are impossible to build. And that is now being fixed as well. That issue is RTBC. It fixes it at the very root level. So far, terms have been using custom storage for this particular field. And Damien has been doing lots of work on this issue and preceding blocking issues that have been committed already that make it so that parents, so the parent field on a term entity no longer is a special snowflake, which means that it will automatically work correctly in views finally as well. No more workarounds there either. He's also a views maintainer, so that's why he was able to get all of that in a consistent place. So hopefully that one will be committed in the next few days. So lots of serialization gap issues that are being fixed, which help the entire ecosystem.
Awesome. I know that some people are already working on JSON API, and the workaround was to just apply the latest patch in that issue. And it's usually—
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, it kind of worked. At least some of those patches. Cool. Thank you. So for the JSON API update, we're running close to the end, so I'm going to be fast in case anyone else wants to add something. We've been making a ton of progress. Like it's amazing. Thanks to Wim and Gabe. They are both now dedicated, I don't know if full-time, but it feels like human full-time. So, so yay for that. I've been trying to keep up in trying to merge stuff and provide feedback, etc. But many nice things have been added, both in the plumbing and the porcelain around things that were bugs before, or even regressions that we introduced in other issues, like we refactored the field resolver, and there was a small regression that we're working through. But just to say, things are a little bit in flux because we are like getting through the old code, let's say, the one that was planned initially, and now we are trying to assess if those decisions still make sense with everything in context, like the code base evolved and that code was like initially planned, and now we are assessing, oh, this still works, and this approach this doesn't, so let's change it, which led to an issue about how some of the normalizers need to be JSON API internal, and because they kind of work on implementing the JSON API spec, and you just cannot change some stuff because then we will just lose compliance with spec, which we cannot afford to do. So that resulted in normalizers violate normalizer interface. I don't know the issue number. We met and we made the decision to move forward with an approach that I'm not going to describe. And I think that which Gabe is working on, and also the comprehensive test coverage is the two issues that I am very jealous that I'm not working on because I just don't have the time, unfortunately. But they are what is going to give the last polish to the JSON API module. And also, a significant amount of work was made in order to clarify what are the steps that need to be followed in order for JSON API to make it into core. It seems that it already got a first assessment by Jess XJM, and things are looking good, but we still trying to just move forward, and we'll reach a point where our blocker is going to be one of the core maintainers. Oh, sorry, the release managers or whoever framework managers. I don't know. Wim probably knows this stuff, so I'm relying on him to help me out with this. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm leaving a lot of stuff unsaid, but as I said, a lot of stuff's going on right now. Wim, Gabe, do you want to add anything to what I said?
Not on my end, no.
Just that if you are interested in following along, the issue, I just pasted it in chat, and I'm not sure if it shows up in the recording, so I'll just say it. It's called the path for JSON API to core, and it's issue number 2931785. So if you want to follow along, which are those issues that are kind of about that final polish, I think is how Matteo framed it. That's where you'll find all the relevant issue links, and hopefully see you there.
Yeah, exactly. Want to give everyone the last chance to speak. Speak now or wait for the next week, and then we're going to call it a meeting. Gonna just be awkwardly silent. All right. That's the awkwardness that I can tolerate. Bye, everyone.
Bye. See you next week.